Did y'all catch that epic interview that Joe Rogan did with your boy Donald J. Trump tonight on the Joe Rogan podcast? I don't care what you think about Donald Trump, but I guarantee you that that interview alone will go down in history as one of the greatest of all times, all right? Y'all, the interview was literally only on YouTube for 2 hours at this point, and it already has over 3 million views. So while your girl Kamala Harris was out there in Houston throwing a free concert with Beyonce Knowles and Kelly Rowland, your boy Donald Trump sat down with Joe Rogan for 3 hours trying to make America great again. Not only did he say...
And then pissed off her voter base... got booed at because guess what? Beyonce didn't perform. Yeah, 10 million spent well spent. 10 million well spent on these P. Diddy party participants.
Sat down with Joe Rogan. After he left that interview, y'all, he literally went to Michigan to do another presidential rally, okay? That interview was so thought-provoking and mind-blowing. He absolutely crushed it, okay? When I tell y'all that the swamp goes deep and he is ready to drain it when he get in office, now I understand why these people do not want him to be the next president of the United States, because if he does, it's going to be over for a lot of them. And if you watch the interview, y'all know who I'm talking about. Y'all, it's over for the Democrats at this point. Make sure y'all go out and do y'all big one and vote big, because we literally only have 8 days to the election, and if it's too big, it cannot be rigged, y'all. Donald J. Trump for president. This interview is epic. Go watch it.
So I always got more publicity than other people, and it wasn't like I was trying. In fact, I don't know exactly why. Maybe you can tell me why.
Oh, I could definitely tell you. You said a lot of wild shit.
Maybe. Maybe
You said a lot of wild shit. And then CNN, in all their brilliance, by highlighting your wild shit, made you much more popular.
Yeah.
And they boosted you in the polls because people were tired of someone talking in this bullshit, pre-prepared politician lingo. And even if they didn't agree with you, they at least knew whoever that guy is, that's him. That's really him. Yeah. When you see certain people talk, certain people in the public eye, you don't know who they are. You have no idea who they are. It's very difficult to know. You see them in conversations. They have these pre-planned answers. They say everything. It's very rehearsed. You never get to the meat of it. One of the beautiful things about you is that you freeball. Like, you get out and you do these huge events and you're just talking and you're making. We've highlighted you on the show many times when you did this Biden impression where he's walking around, he doesn't know what he's doing. It's funny. It's stand up. It's funny stuff. But it's like, you were making fun of Elon one time. You were doing an Elon impression. It's great. You have like comedic instincts. Like when you said to Hillary, "You'd be in jail." Like it's great timing.
Yeah.
But it's like that kind of stuff was unheard of as a politician. Like no one had done that.
Can you imagine Kamala doing this show?
I could imagine her doing this show.
She'd be laying on the floor.
She was supposed to do it, and she might still do it, and I hope she does.
She's not going to do it.
I will talk to her like a human being. I will
if
try to have a conversation with her.
If she did this kind of an interview with you, I hope she does, because it would be a mess. She'd be laying on the floor comatose. You'd be saying, call in the medics.
I think we'd have a fine conversation. I think I'd be able to talk to her. I wouldn't try to interview her. I'd just try to have a conversation with her and hopefully get to know her as a human being. That was my goal, having her on.
Joe Rogan hits the nail on the head, which is exactly what I expected. It's exactly what I knew would happen. Joe Rogan's no Trump sycophant, and I don't think his intention is to sit down with Donald Trump and to fluff him up and essentially try to get him elected. I think he just wanted to have a genuine conversation, and that's the beauty about Joe Rogan's show. That's why he's so popular. He just gets things. Do I agree with him 100% politically? Definitely not. Although we're probably closer than we are far apart, but it's not about partisan politics. It's about honesty. So, in modern day politics, the mainstream media has caused so much chaos. Republicans and Democrats aren't that different. Although, I have to admit, as the left goes further and further towards leftist insanity, at least certain minorities of the party, it gets harder and harder to find common ground. But for the most part, most of us, we want the same thing, whether we're left, right, or center. And we should be able to have conversations and form relationships. But in this day and age, it's become increasingly more difficult because the media, rather than pushing the message, love thy neighbor, they push a message of, if your neighbor has a Donald Trump sign out on their front lawn, they're supporting fascism. When really that's not the case at all. Left, right, and center, we should all be able to sit down and have a cordial conversation about topics, ideas, and that's where you see the good start to come to the surface. And Joe Rogan's an expert at that. He's an expert at not judging people. He even mentioned it when Donald Trump was trying to disparage Kamala Harris a little bit, trying to get a little bit of a campaign zinger in, Joe said, I could have a conversation with anyone as long as they're willing. And that's the beauty. And clearly one side has embraced that and another hasn't. Joe Rogan even said that he's been trying to have Kamala Harris on the show, and at one point it looked like she was going to do it, but instead they're refusing. Now, maybe as the polls continue to show what they're showing, the Kamala campaign is going to realize, well, we actually don't have a choice here and we definitely have to do Rogan. But at this point, even if Kamala Harris does the show, it won't make a difference to that core difference between these two campaigns. It's obvious that Donald Trump is just a regular guy. He's just a regular private citizen who happened to be incredibly successful, and he just had enough, and so he entered politics. And he entered politics not to be a political product, neatly packaged with all the packaged talking points, pre-rehearsed before he sits down with anyone. No, he entered politics, again, as a frustrated person who wanted to do better by his country. And that right there is the fundamental difference, and you can see it so clearly in this campaign. Kamala Harris sits down for these interviews, and when asked questions, she goes on these ridiculous tangents, then immediately, defaults to the ambitions and dreams and aspirations of the middle class. I am from a middle class family. The same rehearsed nonsense over and over again. What CNN described as word salad city. A couple things are really becoming plainly obvious here. It's obvious that Kamala Harris is fake, inauthentic, scripted and controlled. Donald Trump isn't. And it's also obvious that they use that against him, or at least they've attempted to. Donald Trump's not a scripted politician, meaning he's going to say all kinds of things, and eventually he might step on a few Lego pieces, let's call it. And then, of course, that's when the mainstream media jumps into action, misconstruing what he says, deceptively editing, and turning it into this big anti-Trump scandal. And with that, they've created the boogeyman of Trump. And in previous times, they probably would have been able to get away with it. But the world is different now, and I think finally the Trump campaign and really modern politics at large is starting to realize that. You don't need to rely on 60 Minutes, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS to reach voters anymore. There's other alternative pathways. And this is what I've been saying forever. This is the greatest strength of the Trump campaign right now. They realize there's a whole lot more people listening to independent sources than your typical mainstream sources. And I think they've also realized that a lot of these people are low propensity voters or undecided voters. And what better way to connect with voters than to sit down with someone like Joe Rogan, who's so deeply admired and so deeply loved by his core audience base, and also his core audience base who understands the way the media works, because of course Joe Rogan's been public enemy number one before. He's been demonized by the mainstream media, and so they understand these narratives. And now you have Donald Trump sitting down for a 3-hour conversation with Rogan.
How long have we been talking?
A long time.
Let's go.
Probably like 3 hours.
I got to make a speech.
Right.
But we'll do it again. I want to do it again with you.
Okay.
You are something.
Thank you very
I
much.
said, how long will this last? Anywhere from an hour to 3 or 4
How long
hours.
we do, Jamie? 3 hours.
Good. Well, we'll do it again. I thought it was great. I think it was great.
It was a lot of fun.
You are a fascinating guy, and you've
you.
done a great job.
Thank you
I'm a
very
big
much.
fan, and thank you very much. It's been an honor. And
It's been an honor to
I'm
have
going
you
to
on as
make
well.
a great speech, and I'm going to say, and if I'm a little off tonight, I'm going to blame you. I'm going to
Blame
say I
me.
spoke
Go
to
ahead,
this guy
blame
for
me.
3 hours. Anyway, it's a great honor to be
Thank you, sir.
with you.
It's just incredible strategy. And you know what? I call it strategy, but is it really? It's more so authenticity. The Democrat Party is still a prehistoric political entity. They're stuck in the past. They're playing this old game, but people are kind of done with it. And meanwhile, the Republican Party is adapting and changing, crafting this strategy that's built for the modern information day. And that's exactly why this works. Some people might suggest, well, it's not working that well. Donald Trump is essentially statistically tied in the polls. Yeah, but Donald Trump doesn't have the entire media establishment kissing his feet. He doesn't have Beyonce rallying with him, pulling in 30,000 people into a venue. It's man versus the entire machine, and he's getting the job done. What does that tell you? It's an underdog story, and it's the rise of authentic politics, and hopefully the end of inauthentic, scripted mainstream politics.
I watched the Donald Trump interview with Joe Rogan, and I have to tell you, that man, Donald Trump, is so intelligent. He's so wise. He's so charismatic. He's so handsome. He's everything that I said he is. He's handsome. He's good looking. He's tall. He's funny. He's charismatic. He's smart. He's intelligent. He's a great businessman. He understands things. He has a high IQ. You can tell that he just has an intuitive understanding of life. I love this man. He said a lot of good points. He addressed all the issues. He didn't run from anything. He didn't run from the UFO stuff. He didn't run from the JFK files. He didn't run from anything that Joe Rogan brought up. And I love that. It was a great interview. I wonder, did y'all watch it? What do y'all think about the interview? I thought it was great. I loved it. It was a really interesting one. Shout out to y'all that recommended me to watch it instead of waiting a few days to watch it. It was really good, man. Joe Rogan's a great interviewer. I love his amazing skills that he has. Donald Trump is the best interviewee I probably ever witnessed, besides maybe this man named Graham Hancock. Besides those two guys, those are two of the best interviews I've ever seen on Joe Rogan. But what do y'all think, guys?
Did you just float out the idea of getting rid of income taxes and replacing it with tariffs?
Well, okay.
Were you serious about that?
Yeah, sure. But why not? Because ready? Our country was the richest relatively in the 1880s and 1890s. A president who was assassinated named McKinley. He was the tariff king. He spoke beautifully of tariffs. His language was really beautiful. We will not allow the enemy to come in and take our jobs and take our factories and take our workers and take our families unless they pay a big price. And the big price is tariffs. And he'd speak like that, but he was right. And then around in the early 1900s, they switched over stupidly to, frankly, an income tax. And you know why? Because countries were putting a lot of pressure on America. We don't want to pay tariffs. Please don't. Believe me, they control our politicians. The biggest mistake I made was I picked some people. I picked some great people, but you don't think about that. I picked some people that I shouldn't have picked. I picked a few people that I shouldn't have picked. And
neocons?
Yeah, neocons or bad people or disloyal people or
people that were just
people
bad,
that were into the
people got bad advice.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're reading about him a little bit today. A guy like Kelly, who was a bully, but a weak person. You know more about bullies than anybody probably around because you deal in a certain sport where the bullies are exposed very quickly.
Yeah,
but he's bad. Bolton was an idiot, but he was great for me because I'd go in with a guy like a John Bolton. John Bolton. A friend of mine called me up. I was picking Bolton, and he's a very smart guy. His name is Phil Ruffin. He's a very rich guy from Las Vegas. He's a great card player. He doesn't play cards, but he's a great player. He's just a natural. Got poker sense, right? The good old poker sense. And Phil Ruffin is a very, very wise kind of a guy. And one of the richest people around, and has had great success and understands people. So it was in that I was picking Bolton, or I picked Bolton. He called up. He said, "Don't pick him. Why? He's a bad guy." Now he wasn't in politics at all. He's in various businesses. He said, "He's a bad guy. It always works out bad with that guy." I said, "Oh man, I wish you told me this 2 weeks ago. I already hired him. He's here." And he was right, but he was good in a certain way. He's a nut job, and every time I had to deal with a country, when they saw this whack job standing behind me, they said, "Oh man, Trump's going to go to war with us." He was with Bush when they went stupidly into the Middle East.
Billions of dollars worth of equipment and military vehicles that they use for parades now.
The best equipment, to embarrass us, the best equipment in the world.
The Taliban parade where they've got tanks rolling down the streets and Blackhawks flying is the craziest thing I've ever seen.
We
left all that stuff there.
The best equipment in the world behind.
What would you have done differently?
Well, number one, we would have taken it out. Just so you go back a little bit further, I had a couple of conversations with Abdul. And from the time I had those conversations, because they were shooting our soldiers, with the sniper stuff, they were shooting a lot of them. They were shooting a lot with Obama, much less with me, but they were shooting them. And I said, "Get this guy on the phone." The press went nuts when they heard this. I had a great conversation with him. It was a tough conversation. 18 months later, there wasn't one soldier that was ever shot at. And even Biden admitted it in a moment of stupidity because he shouldn't admit it. His people wouldn't.
Okay, so first thing, I deployed to Afghanistan in 2009, all right? When I got to Bagram Air Base, they would have a field of military vehicles. We're talking hundreds of them, okay, that were transported from Iraq to Afghanistan. The problem with these vehicles is that they were best for desert, flat land. Well, when they got to Afghanistan, a lot of soldiers were dying because these vehicles would roll over because Afghanistan is more rough terrain. It's mountainous. Why do I say that? Well, because the government wasted so much money on Afghanistan. It's just asinine if you really got into the nitty gritty of it. But the point here is that clearly on the world stage, America looked weak in the way that we withdrew from Afghanistan. And because we know this was a policy decision, Joe Rogan and Donald Trump did talk about Kamala Harris's policies. It was actually pretty funny. Watch this.
But she was to fund the police. She was all these transgender operations. You know, if you wanted a sex change and you were in detention and you demanded a sex change, they would give you a sex change.
Well, the wildest one is this idea of giving free sex change to illegal immigrants.
That's right. In detention.
That is the wildest
But
thing.
she was-
is that the biggest problem you have?
Yeah.
You just walked here from Guatemala. You need to become
That's
a girl.
right. But she was in favor of it.
Yes.
So think of it. She changed. She changed 15 policies. In fact, I'm going to send her a MAGA cap.
She
because
stole your idea about no tax for tips.
I came up with this idea that honestly nobody ever heard of. Now, it took her 2 months, but you know what? All of a sudden,
It caught fire.
and she just put it into a little speech.
Yeah,
Well,
it became
but
popular.
I think we still have that issue. I think that issue is a good one for us.
And that's why the Trump campaign is spending $82 million in the month of October in Pennsylvania on that exact ad, right? Because it's just radical. And it's exactly who Kamala Harris is. I think that's when we truly start to see some level of authenticity from her. If we go back to 2019, what she's trying to sell people on today is not who she really is. We know this. And of course, the people who are really helping her do that is the Trump deranged media, and Joe Rogan gets into that as well. Watch.
It's a creepy, corrupt business, and the media, to a large extent, acts as a propaganda arm for the Democratic Party.
It's not even believable.
Yeah, it's bizarre to watch, and most young people, I think, are aware of it. I think most boomers still, unfortunately, read the newspapers and believe in CNN.
But it's getting younger. Let me
Yes.
tell you, it's getting for us, for a conservative.
Yes.
And I don't
But you know
even,
why
I
that
consider
is?
myself
It's
a person.
the internet. It's because the internet's
think
giving
so.
people information that they're not getting from anywhere else. And they like the Very Fine People hoax, the Russiagate hoax, all these different things that they've done. They tried to pin on you. That's like, it's a clear distortion of what you actually said.
The bloodbath hoax.
Yes.
I was talking about
Yes.
the auto industry.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
a bloodbath because Japan and
course.
China are taking our auto. And I
Yes.
said, it's a bloodbath. They said, he used the word bloodbath.
He said, if you
think
don't
of
win,
somebody,
it's going to be a bloodbath
that's
because
right,
they're going to take
right.
over. That's exactly what you
it's a terrible
said.
thing they do.
But that's the problem with propagandists, because they take things out of context, and ultimately what they do is they diminish their own credibility because people don't want to listen to them anymore because they see that they've done that and they recognize what's going on and they feel insulted. Their intelligence is
Well,
getting
look at the
insulted.
ratings.
And that's why the media has lost all their credibility, because it's all about anonymous source said this, anonymous source said that, when it's all just factually untrue, right?
Fake news. Enemy of the people.
That's really what's going on. And so it gives the power over to people like me, people like Joe Rogan, anybody else out there who is creating their own content and reporting on these stories. So we are happy that this is happening.
Salute to my brother, man. And I want to thank him for his service once again. Salute to all of our veterans, all of our families, our parents that are watching, man. We love you guys, man. And we're wishing the best in everybody's life. We don't care what age, what race. One love to the human race, man. But again, I want to send my love to all my content creators, the independent media. We've done such an amazing job this year, y'all. And we wouldn't be where we at if it wasn't for them beautiful patriots that are tuned in right now. That shares, reposts our videos, that hit the like button. You know, we've done such an amazing job, man. Such an amazing job. So our celebration is gonna hit completely different when come November 5th, man. It's gonna hit completely different, man, because we've done such an amazing job, y'all. We've put in a lot of time, a lot of hard work, man.
And we know it's a dying industry. I'm sure the news isn't going to go away completely, but the last time I checked, there was a study that said 30% of people are using YouTube to get their news, which is crazy. Now, of course, one of the reasons why it favors Trump so much is because of how popular he is and the amount of attention that he gets. Here's what he had to say about that popularity.
So I always got more publicity than other people, and it wasn't like I was trying. In fact, I don't know exactly why. Maybe you can tell me why.
Oh, I could definitely tell you. You said a lot of wild shit.
Maybe Maybe
He
that's
said a lot of wild shit, and then CNN in all their brilliance by highlighting your wild shit.
I think this is one of probably in the top 3 or top 5 of favorite clips out of this interview podcast. Out of all the clips that you can get, this is probably in everybody's like top 3, top 5. Everybody loved this part. Everybody's reposting this part. I know y'all seen it in the beginning of the video as well too.
Shit made you much more popular.
Yeah.
And they boosted you in the polls because people were tired of someone talking in this bullshit pre-prepared politician lingo. And even if they didn't agree with you, they at least knew whoever that guy is, that's him. That's really him. Yeah. When you see certain people talk, certain people in the public eye, you don't know who they are. You have no idea who they are. It's very difficult to know. You see them in conversations. They have these pre-planned answers. They say everything. It's very rehearsed. You never get to the meat of it. One of the beautiful things about you is that you freeball. Like you get out and you do these huge events, and you're just talking and you're making. We've highlighted you on the show many times when you did this Biden impression where he's walking around, he doesn't know what he's doing. It's funny. It's stand up. It's funny stuff. But it's like. You were making fun of Elon one time. You were doing an Elon impression. It's great. You have like comedic instincts. Like when you said to Hillary, "You'd be in jail." Like that's great timing. Yeah. But it's like that kind of stuff was unheard of as a politician. Like no one had done that.
Yeah. Now you were just hearing some of those radical things that the media is either reporting or not reporting on, of course. And that brings us to the summary of American politics and what has changed. And I think everyone that is in high school all the way up to an adult in college should hear this next clip.
The rebels are Republicans now. They're like, you want to be a rebel, you want to be punk rock, you want to buck the system, you're a conservative now. That's how crazy. And then the liberals are now pro silencing criticism. They're pro censorship online. They're talking about regulating free speech and they're regulating the First Amendment. It's bananas to watch.
Joe, they come after their political opponent.
Well, they do.
Got more guys. I always say, I kid, but I'm not kidding. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the meanest of them all. He'd kill you in 2 seconds if he didn't like you, right? I've been under investigation more than Alphonse Capone, only because it's political opponent stuff. And I've won. I won the big case in Florida. I'm winning the other stuff. You win. But you know what they did? They did something that's only done in third world countries. They came after their political opponent. Yes. I could have put crooked Hillary in jail.
Well, not only that, but they're weaponizing it by saying that that's what you're going to do once you get in office.
Isn't it
By
great?
ignoring what they're doing right now. It's crazy.
Bananas out in the middle of the street. Kangaroos jumping at the intersection. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And y'all know I reposted this clip on my story on my social media like 3 times yesterday.
Crazy. I heard it. Somebody was defending me today. They said, no, they say that's what you're doing to him. They're going, he's going to put us in jail. He's going to invest. That's what you're doing to him.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, will you do that? Will you do that to him if you win? It's the presidency has tremendous power. I could have put crooked Hillary.
I respected that you didn't because what you said was it would be bad for the country.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about on that. And before I get there, if you guys are getting value from this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. If you want to support us further, go to the link in the description below and grab yourself a t-shirt or buy us a cup of coffee. Again, the full clip of this entire podcast is in the description, so make sure that you do watch it on your own time. Now, what's interesting and that I thought that I appreciated was bringing up what has changed in American politics. And this country is really craving for just common sense. That's really where we're at this point. That's why so many people are involved in politics today, because these people in Washington, they've crossed too many lines, right? They are doing too many crazy things at this point. And so many people have to stand up for the truth and call it out. And one of those things that are getting really out of hand is this whole thing about voter ID. Here's Joe Rogan and Trump talking about that.
That certainly is a problem. Mail-in ballots are a problem.
But every
Another
other country,
problem is
other
voter
countries,
ID.
Yeah, a voter ID. How
Voter
about,
ID is the most bizarre argument that
Yeah.
I've never seen anybody articulate in a way that's convincing.
Because
why
they
you
wanna
don't
cheat.
need voter. Well, it doesn't make sense any other way. I've tried to straw man it, or I've tried to steel man it rather. I've tried to look at it from a position like, why would you not want people to have ID? And a lot of the ideas are
Cheat.
just ridiculous. You
Gavin
need an
Newsom.
ID to get a driver's license.
Okay, but here's now the next step. Gavin Newsom, one of the worst governors in the world, and I used to get along, but I don't get along with him now because he's just too, it's just a whole con job. But Gavin Newsom, the other day, signed a bill that you are not allowed to ask a person, even ask them whether or not they have a voter ID.
Now, what could be
If
a
you
charitable reason why anybody
Because they
would
wanna
want
cheat.
that? But
Because
that
they
would be
wanna
the
cheat.
only thing that makes sense.
But that's taking it to the next level.
right.
Now, you have ID. The Democrat National Convention, when they had it the last time, I saw, they had a sign, like a billboard, on the name of the person, where they live, how they live, who the hell their boyfriends are. Every single, and a big picture. That's for they have an ID, a big ID. It was hanging like you were a prisoner. They had these massive cards, everything. And yet when it comes to the vote, in theory, the most important thing we do, okay, when you go to a grocery store, you give ID. But for a vote, it's supposed to be a sacred thing, and it should be a sacred thing. No voter ID because they want to cheat.
Well, it doesn't make sense in any other way. I've tried to look at
There's
it.
no other way.
There's no argument that anybody's presented that makes any sense why.
You know the funny thing, Joe? The Democrats, the people, they all think you should have it. In other words, you should have
Yeah.
voting. If you go to the people, Mrs. Schwartz, Mrs. Smith, Mr. and Mrs. Jones,
Sure.
they say, of course, yeah. Democrats, they say yes. It's the politicians that don't want it, like Schumer and these guys, they don't want it because they want to be able to cheat. Because you know what? If they didn't have it, okay, who is going to vote for somebody that wants open borders? Who's going to vote for somebody that wants to have men playing in women's sports? I have never had one person come up to me and say, President, you got to do something to allow men to play in women's sports. Have you ever? Just like I've never been called by a pollster. I told you my little theory on pollsters, okay? I'm getting myself in trouble with some of these things, but I don't really care. Nobody's ever come up to me and said, we want to have men play in women's sports.
Now I live in California. I think Gavin Newsom, not new scum, but Newsom, I think this guy is insane. You're telling me it's against the law for me to ask someone for their ID in order to vote, but I can ask them for their ID if they want to get alcohol. I got to ask for their ID if they're trying to enter the doctor's office. I mean, come on, what's going on here, right? Common sense is out the window. So I was saying this country is craving for common sense. Now, why is that? There's got to be a reason, right? Of course there is, because think about the recent polling we've heard. They're losing the black vote. They're losing the Latino vote. They're losing the working class vote. So they got to replace it somehow. How do they do that? They bring in millions of illegal migrants. They put them in these cities where they're losing the support at. So they have those votes in the future. Now, it sounds depressing when you talk about it. So something that was uplifting during this podcast episode was Joe Rogan praising Trump for obviously his collaboration with RFK Jr. Watch.
First of all, I love this idea of you teaming up with Robert Kennedy.
Right.
And I love this Make America Healthy Again idea because there are chemicals and ingredients that are in our food that are illegal in other countries because they've been shown to be toxic. There's pesticides and herbicides, and there's a lot of shit that's been sprayed on our food that really is unnecessary. And there's a lot of health consequences that people are suffering from a lot of these things. And
I brought this chart for you.
Beautiful.
Because I had a feeling you'd be asking me.
Thank
Look
you.
at this chart. These are healthier countries. Look where the United States is. I'm going to send this to RFK Jr. Look
so
at that.
this is something along the. I was actually talking to RFK today, and he told me that more than 70% of young men are ineligible for the military because of their health.
I could see it.
That's
a
crazy.
lot of it's obesity.
So here's the life expectancy versus
That's it.
health expenditure.
Same chart.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
USA.
Wow,
yeah.
that's pretty good.
Jamie's the best.
He's very good.
He's the best.
But look at that. Look where
at
the USA is.
It's not good, and
they
that's our
spend all
food.
that
That's our diet. That's
sad.
sedentary lifestyle.
That
That's
is
our
terrible.
diet. That's the chemicals we ingest. That's what that is.
But RFK is going to be very. I think he's a great guy.
I
think
love
he's
the
great.
fact that you guys teamed up.
Yeah, it's
and
a
are you
good
guys completely committed to have him a part of your administration?
Oh, I am. But the only thing I want to be a little careful about with him is the environmental. Because he doesn't like oil. I love oil and gas. I think
Just
it's
keep him out of that.
to fire. So I'm going to sort of keep him out of a little. I said, focus on health. Focus.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want.
It's funny that people are so focused on this hoax when it comes to Trump and him admiring Hitler generals, which is it's crazy, that whole talking point that she's deciding to close her election campaign with. But anyways, I digress. It's crazy that is what people are focusing on, and not the fact that you have a presidential candidate who's clearly going to put resources behind making our country healthy. I mean, isn't that what everyone wants? I mean, I find that to be interesting. 70% of young men can't even get into the military. Are you kidding me? I mean, we are just poisoning ourselves at this point. And so good for Trump for making that move. And I think it's just going to backfire on the Democratic Party, especially Kamala Harris. And when we're speaking about things that are going to backfire on Kamala Harris, her not doing this podcast episode is definitely going to backfire. Here's what Trump had to say about that.
Can you imagine Kamala doing this show?
I could imagine her doing this show.
She'd be laying on the floor.
She was supposed to do it, and she might still do it, and I hope she does.
She's not going to do it.
I will talk to her like a human being. I would
if
try
she
to have a
did this
conversation
kind of an
with her.
interview with you, I hope she does, because it would be a mess. She'd be laying on the floor comatose. You'd be saying, call in the medics.
I think we'd have a fine conversation.
I think it's another missed opportunity. She's out of touch with reality, with what voters really want.
Yep.
Trump is meeting people where they are at with this podcast. Just imagine the amount of people they're going to be able to reach. She's too busy in Houston with Beyonce, I guess, trying to motivate people to vote for her. But you know who did that last time? That was Hillary Clinton. And you see how that turned out. But hey, that's a whole nother thing. Now, there is one talking point that the Kamala Harris campaign is trying to tell people or convince people that Trump is exhausted. I find it fitting how he ended the podcast episode with Joe Rogan. Watch this.
And those plants would open up all over, and they'll fund them. We don't have to put up 10 cents. And I am in the process of making a huge speech in about a little while. And you and I, how long have we been talking?
A long time.
Let's go.
Probably like 3 hours.
I got to make a speech.
Right.
But we'll do it again. I want to do it again with you.
Okay.
You are something.
Thank you very
I
much.
said, how long will this last? Anywhere from an hour to 3 or 4
How long
hours.
we do, Jamie? 3 hours.
Good. Well, we'll do it again. I thought it was great. I think it
was great. It was a lot of fun.
You are a fascinating guy, and you've done a great job.
All right. So this,
It's real, man. It's authentic. You know. What do y'all think of that? If you watch it, man, and again, if you haven't, go and watch it. It's about 3 hours. We enjoyed the whole thing. And I'm debating if I should post that whole 3 hour video. We did record it, but we didn't post the 3 hour because they were talking about some kind of it being censored. So, but we'll see. We might try to upload that full live reaction of us checking out that 3 hour interview. Let me know if y'all want to see it. Comment down below. But yeah, man, I believe it's a wrap, y'all. But we have to go out and vote. We cannot get complacent. We have to go out and vote, man. It has to be too big to rig, man. Because we are not against a candidate. We are against a corrupt system, a corrupt machine, man. You know, and I told you, these campaigns have been completely different. But we are focused. We are disciplined. And we're going to end this thing off big, man. We're going to be at the Madison Square Garden. It's going to be crazy, y'all. You know? Let me know what y'all think. I love y'all. And I will catch you beautiful people in the next one. Peace and love, y'all.